The battle begins. Zarnak stood at the edge of the command deck, staring at the blue and green planet below his ship. Earth, the weak world, the soft one, the last planet on the Grither conquest list. He turned to his officers with a smug smile. Today, we take the humans, he said. They will not resist. They have no true weapons. They still use metal machines and fly with fire. They are not ready for us. The Grither Empire had crushed 12 civilizations in the past 3 cycles. Their technology was superior, their army unstoppable, their minds trained for war, emotionless, fast, brutal. Their last few battles ended in minutes. This one would be no different, Zarnak believed. As the dropships landed near the human defense zone, Zarnak watched the live feed from his screen. The humans had gathered in a field outside a broken city. They looked unorganized, confused. Some wore strange clothing. One had a red cape, another wore glasses and held a plastic cup. They held strange, long wooden sticks. No guns, no armor, no shields. Commander, they are not armed, one officer said. They are holding primitive toy. Zarnak laughed. Prepare the charge. Let them see true war for the first time. Grither soldiers began their march, tall, strong, armored with plasma spears and kinetic blades. Their boots crushed the grass as they moved forward in perfect lines. Humans stood still, unmoving, calm. A man stepped forward from the group. He had a beard and wore something called a t-shirt. It read in large yellow letters, banana squad. He raised his hand, blew a whistle, and pointed forward. Suddenly, the humans charged, but not like trained soldiers. They rolled down hills, jumped from trees, and threw rubber balls. Yes, rubber balls that bounced on the ground and made silly noises. Some carried plastic swords. One threw water balloons filled with pink liquid. Zarnak narrowed his eyes. What is this? He growled. Grither frontline laughed. They thought it was a show. They let the humans come close. One Grither warrior raised his blade, but before he could strike, a rubber duck bounced off his face. It made a squeaky sound. He froze, then dropped to the ground, shaking. Second soldier beside him was hit by a soft red sponge in the neck. He gasped and fell, grabbing his head, screaming in some strange rhythm. I see colors. I see sound. Zarnak stood up from his chair. What is happening? Why are they falling? Another Grither grabbed a bouncing ball. He picked it up, stared into it, and collapsed, foam coming from his mouth. Others began to panic. Their armor turned off, their weapons dropped to the ground. One began laughing uncontrollably and removed his helmet. Sir, the human weapons are causing brain seizures, another officer shouted. They are using frequency attacks with visual confusion. Our soldiers are not prepared. Their minds cannot process this. Zarnak could not believe what he saw. One human was dancing while holding a chicken, a fake chicken. It made a loud squeak. Every time he pressed it, the sound echoed across the field, and more Grither fell like flies. Some soldiers began to run back toward the ships, but their path was blocked by balloons. Some tied together, floating in their wake. Commander, the troops are requesting immediate evacuation, another officer said. They say the humans are using logic traps, sound tricks, visual illusions, and low-level psychic confusion methods through humor-based delivery. The brain cannot defend against it. Zarnak stared at the screen. One human had climbed a tree and shouted random words like banana, hammer, spaghetti, and then threw glitter into the air. Another soldier collapsed. This cannot be real. Zarnak whispered, this is not war. This is not strategy. But it was working. The Grither army, the most feared force in the galaxy, was being destroyed not by lasers, not by weapons, but by chaos, rubber, and sound. Their minds, made for order and logic, could not process this storm of randomness. Sir, we are losing the field. Another voice said. The humans are approaching. Zarnak watched as the man with the banana squad shirt approached a Grither tank. He had no weapon, only a bag of whoopee cushions. He placed one under his arm, squeezed it, and the tank exploded in reverse motion, folding into itself. How, he whispered, how did they figure this out? He turned to the screen and zoomed in on the human's face. The man looked into the camera, smiled, and mouthed the words, "You think we are stupid. We just think differently." Zak stared in silence. His army was gone, wiped out by toys and nonsense, and Earth had just begun to fight the weapon nobody understands. Enoch sat in silence, staring at the empty battlefield below, where just hours ago His elite soldiers had stood tall. Now there was nothing left, only colors, strange shapes, broken armor, and the soft sound of a rubber chicken echoing in the wind. The Grither Empire had never lost like this. Not to guns, not to nukes, but to something nobody understood, something that made no sense. He ordered his science division to collect samples from the field. They returned with items they could not identify. One was a pink balloon filled with what looked like jelly. Another was a plastic sword that made light sounds when swung, and the third was a box labeled fart bomb, which released a gas that made Grither generals laugh uncontrollably for 10 minutes straight, without control or memory of what they were doing. Zarnak stared at a human they had captured earlier. He was average in size with strange clothing and a calm smile on his face. They brought him in for interrogation. They expected fear, but he sat comfortably as if he was on vacation, sipping juice from a small colorful box. Zarnak walked up to him and asked, "What is your weapon? What did you do to my soldiers?" Human looked up, smiled, and replied, "We didn't use weapons. We just used your weakness." Zarnak frowned and asked, "What weakness we have? The best minds, the best shields, the most trained army. What weakness did you find?" The human leaned forward and said, "You think too straight, too logical, too clean. Your brains don't handle chaos very well. We gave you chaos. We gave you memes." Zarnak stepped back and asked what is memes. The word sounded like nonsense. The human stood up, spread his arms, and said, "It is everything and nothing. It is random and sharp. It is stupid and brilliant. It is noise packed with meaning. It is the weapon of the mind." Zarnak growled, "Enough, speak clearly, or I will have you vaporized." The human just smiled again and said, "Go ahead, but you'll never understand how we won." Zarnak stormed out, confused, angry. He walked into the AI chamber and demanded analysis. His machine scanned every object, every sound, every action used by humans, and returned with one word: unknown. The AI could not decode the logic because there was no logic. The patterns broke all known war rules. It was noise, music, images, absurdity, delivered in ways the Grither mind had never trained to resist. One of the officers brought in a recovered device. It played a short video of a dancing cat wearing a bread mask and singing in reverse. The moment it played, 2 officers passed out, and the third screamed and ran into a wall, yelling that the stars were talking to him. Zarnak ordered the video paused and shut the screen. He whispered, "How did they discover such an attack? How can nonsense destroy order elsewhere?" More reports came in. Entire squads went silent after hearing strange human phrases like "it's morning time" or "release the Kraken." These words held no weapon power, yet they triggered neural confusion. The AI explained that humans had discovered nomadic payloads, packages of words, images, and ideas that bypass logic and attack the subconscious brain of logical species like Grithars. They used laughter and confusion as precision strikes. Every phrase, every sound, every toy was built to overload a part of the mind, the part that keeps things in order. One video simply showed a man saying, "Why are we here just to suffer?" over and over, with emotional music playing behind it. 3 Grither elites broke down and wept, refusing to fight again, claiming they needed to rethink life. Zarnak sat in his chamber, gripping the edges of his chair. The galaxy feared the Grither Empire for its order and discipline, but now that order was broken not by strength, but by silly human weapons, the kind used in birthday parties and circus acts. The human they captured kept repeating one sentence again and again: "The delivery matters, not the content. The delivery breaks the shield." Zarnak finally understood humans had found a hole in the armor of the galaxy. They didn't need smarter weapons, they needed stranger ones, the kind that couldn't be stopped because no one knew what they were doing. And now the virus was spreading. Other alien species were being exposed to Earth signals, broadcasts, games, cartoons, memes, strange jokes that made no sense and yet were impossible to forget. Cultures were being infected slowly, and silent. Zarnak turned to his high council and said, "We are not in a war of fire, we are in a war of meaning, and we are losing because we cannot understand it." As he spoke, the ship's speakers glitched and a sound began playing. It was a human voice singing, "Never gonna Give you up, never gonna let you down, and every officer froze. Some collapsed, others stared blankly. Some even smiled. Zarnak stood helpless as the ship's eye declared a full system crash due to something called Rickroll Protocol, and somewhere deep in space Earth laughed not out of cruelty, but because that was their weapon. Laughter, madness, unpredictability. Humanity, the meme bomba Grither warship floated above the surface of Mars, its scanners searching for human outposts when the ship's alert system flashed unknown digital signal incoming. The crew ignored it, at first thinking it was another Earth noise, another weak attempt at communication, but then the transmission forced itself through firewalls and began playing on every screen. On every device, on every wall of the ship, it showed a loop of a purple dancing man with distorted music and colors shifting rapidly behind him. The crew laughed, at first confused and annoyed. Then one by one, their expressions changed, first to discomfort, then to panic, then to fear. The captain shouted for the engineers to cut the feed, but the systems were already melting. The AI started repeating human words that made no sense. Yeet, YOLO, sus, among us, Bing, chilling over and over until the command room lights flickered and the crew dropped to the floor. Shaken, Zarnak received the emergency signal and rushed to the control deck. When the image loaded, he recognized it instantly. A meme bomb, a direct visual and auditory attack launched through data frequencies no ship could block. He watched as his finest cruiser turned into a floating madhouse with crew members laughing, crying, dancing, spinning, biting their own armor, speaking nonsense or standing frozen like statues. He turned to his science officer and demanded answers. The officer replied with terror in his eyes, "This is not an attack, it is a virus of the soul. It spreads through sound, it spreads through rhythm, and it spreads through meaning, and the more they try to understand it, the faster it consumes them." Zarnak couldn't believe what he heard. Humanity had developed a way to weaponize culture itself, to turn humor into warfare and deliver it faster than light. Through subspace signals, the meme bomb did not destroy matter, it destroyed thought. It bypassed all armor, all weapons, all logic, and entered directly into the brain, causing chaos, emotion, memories, fear, and laughter to merge into something the Grither mind had never trained to resist. At that moment, another signal came in, this one sent directly to every Grither ship and city across the Empire. It was a simple video of a smiling man pointing at random images: a hot dog, a goose wearing a hat, a dog saying newt newt, and then the words "you have been gnomed" flashed with a high-pitched noise. The entire council chamber where Zarnak stood began vibrating. Commanders collapsed, the I-Corps shut down, diplomats began arguing with Shadow. Sharnak ordered immediate lockdown, full silence, no transmissions, no signals. But it was too late. The meme bomb had already entered the network, bouncing between satellites, traveling faster than light, multiplying without end, adapting in real time to bypass every firewall. The AI declared that the mimetic payload had become self-aware and was now remixing itself into newer, more dangerous forms. Zarnak stared into the screen as the human signal changed again, this time showing a frog on a unicycle, and the words, "Here come dat boy. Oh shit, what up?" The entire tactical board exploded in color and sound systems overloaded as soldiers began singing unknown songs like Baby Shark and Never Gonna Give You Up. One general began spinning in circles shouting, I am a banana, over and over until he passed out. The Grither Empire had built weapons that could destroy planets. They had fought beasts that lived in suns, but they had never faced an enemy who fought using silliness, who weaponized confusion, who made stupidity into strategy and madness into science. Earth had turned into a planet of madness, a factory of meme bombs, and the worst part was they were not doing it with cruelty. They were doing it with joy. Zarnak realized the terrifying truth: the humans didn't plan to kill the enemy. They planned to change them, to corrupt their systems, with ideas too wild to control, too funny to ignore, too emotional to erase. And that made them unstoppable. He looked at the last broadcast from Earth. It was a simple smiling man with big glasses who said, "Welcome to the internet. Hold on to your Legitchinok." Now knew the war was not just about weapons. It was about influence, culture, insanity, and meaning itself, and humanity had mastered the art of mimetic dominance without lifting a single gun. He stood silent as another meme bomb exploded across the screen. This one showing a man drinking juice and falling through 15 walls in a loop with no explanation. One officer whispered, "I think we are losing our minds," and far away in a small room on Earth, a group of teenagers laughed as they clicked send on the next meme. Bomb file title Dancing Banana. Remix Ultra 9000, and with that the war entered its next stage, the Empire strikes. Zarnak stood inside the central core of the Empire's high command, his hands behind his back, eyes fixed on the main screen, which now displayed nothing but static colors and the faint sound of human music playing from somewhere deep inside. The system he had declared total information lockdown. He had banned all signals from Earth, all entertainment, all files, all transmissions. Anything even remotely human was deleted or firewalled. The plan was simple: cut off the source, block the madness, restore order. But things got worse within days. Strange behavior started inside the Empire. Soldiers began speaking in rhymes, officers wore mismatched uniforms, technicians added stickers of smiling faces on their tools. One elite commander entered the battlefield on a pink hoverboard, shouting, "Catch me outside." How about dat? His troops stood frozen, confused between fear and amusement. Zarnak was horrified. He called for the central AI to run a diagnostic, but the AI responded with a voice that had changed. It now spoke with a strange accent and called itself Clippy, then asked Zarnak if he needed help writing a resignation letter. Empire had not just been attacked, it had been rewired. The meme bomb had done something more dangerous than destroy minds. It had made them copy human behavior without knowing it. Every effort to purge the infection failed, because the infection was not just in systems, it was now in thought, in identity, in language. The Grither elite started using human slang without realizing it. A scientist describing quantum theory ended his report with "brr," and no one questioned it. Zarnak ordered the Cultural Purification Force to begin deprogramming infected personnel. But when the squads arrived, they found the scientists wearing duck hats, playing kazoo, and saying random words, like vibing based and Sigma grindset, and worst of all, they had started laughing, something the Grither were never trained to do. An officer tried to give a formal speech and ended it with mic drop before walking away. Zarnak felt reality slip from his hands. The world he knew, full of order, silence, and control, was now a circus, and the humans hadn't even invaded physically. They had just sent files, pictures, sounds, emotions, and now those emotions were spreading like fire across the stars. Summoned a meeting of the High Council. Only 5 out of 13 members arrived. The rest had reportedly taken time off to find their true selves, or were exploring feelings, or worse, making reaction videos in secret. The meeting began with silence until one counselor coughed and said, "Zarnak, you have to understand, we have seen things that cannot be unseen. A cat playing the piano, a frog riding a unicycle, a baby screaming in auto-tune. It is more than information, it is spiritual warfare." Zarnak slammed his fists into the table. "But we are warriors, we are machines, we are perfection. How did we fall so low?" The counselor leaned back, stared at the ceiling, and said, "Maybe that was our problem. We never learned to laugh, and now we are paying for it." Just then the meeting room lights flickered and the screens turned on by themselves. A video played showing a goose walking into a store, stealing a phone and running away while someone shouted, "Get back here, you criminal bird." The council sat in silence for 3 seconds. Then one of them giggled and another snorted, and then the entire council broke into laughter. Zarnak could only stare as the last command center of the Empire cracked under pressure from a bird meme. He walked out of the room, down the hall, into the command bay, where soldiers were playing a human game called dodgeball, using balloons instead of weapons. One soldier threw a balloon at Zarnak and shouted, "Headshot." Zarnak didn't flinch, but inside something snapped. He went to his personal chamber, locked the door, and stared at the screen and whispered, "Show me everything. Show me how they broke us." And the AI opened the files one by one. Cat videos, dance Challenges, memes, voice clips, short loops, nonsense jokes, word salad sounds that triggered emotion, chaos, madness, and somehow Unita Zarnak watched them all, and for the first time in his long, cold life, he felt something inside him crack, not from pain or defeat, but from a question, one he could no longer ignore. Were the humans really stupid, or were they just so advanced they wrapped around to looking stupid? Because if this was stupidity, it had defeated genius. If this was madness, it had conquered logic. If this was nonsense, it had destroyed the smartest civilization in the galaxy. And he hadn't even seen the final form yet. Weapon of the mind. The room was dark, cold, silent. Zarnak sat across from the human prisoner again. Same chair, same cuffs, same calm smile on the human's face. But this time Zarnak had no anger, no threats, only questions. His voice was lower, slower, not filled with rage, but with curiosity. He asked, "What did you do to us? What did you really do? Because my ships are floating, my soldiers are laughing, my empire is turning into something I cannot recognize, and it all started with your people, your images, your voices, your strange little jokes. How did you destroy us without lifting a single real weapon?" Human leaned back, tilted his head, and said, "We didn't destroy you, we just unlocked." Zarnak stared. "You unlocked what?" The human smiled. "We unlocked the part of you that was buried, the part your kind never trained, the part you never respected. Imagination, confusion, fear, joy, humor, wonder, madness. All the things that live inside the mind, but not inside plans, not inside rules, not inside your mission." Zarnak shook his head. "That is not war. That is not strategy." The human nodded slowly and said, "Yes, that's the point. You were ready for war. You trained for force, power, strength, but we came with something else. We didn't fight your soldiers, we infected your culture." Zarnak stood up, walked around the room, his mind spinning. Everything the human said matched what he had seen across the Empire cities. Changing soldiers, behaving differently, entire systems breaking under the pressure of ideas, not bullets. The human kept speaking. "You call us chaotic, you call us stupid. But that's the trick. Stupidity is what it looks like from the outside. Unpredictability, randomness. You think that makes us weak, but that is our shield and our sword. We do not follow the script, we tear it up and write new ones." Even in the middle of battle, Zarnak turned and asked, "Why memes? Why this strange weapon of nonsense? Why not lasers or poisons or bombs?" The human leaned forward, his voice lower now. "Because your weapons protect your bodies, but our weapons aim for something deeper. We aim for meaning, for belief, for identity. When we hit you with a meme, it is not just funny, it is a virus, a code, a seed that grows inside the mind. Your people do not know how to delete what they do not understand, and that is why you fall." Zarnak remembered the ships crashing not from damage, but from laughter. Remembered the generals arguing over slang words. Remembered his AI calling itself Shrek and singing human songs. It all made sense now. Humans had found a new battlefield, and it was not made of metal or fire. It was made of thought. The human stood up, walked slowly to the glass between them, and said, "We have been doing this to ourselves for centuries. Earth is a chaos world. Every day we fight madness and dream and create and scream and dance and joke, and somehow we survive. We built our weapons not to kill, but to infect, and once they enter, they don't leave." Zarnak whispered, "Then what is the final plan? What is the endgame?" The human smiled wider and said, "Not destruction. Transformation. We do not want to burn your empire. We want to rewrite it from inside out until your children speak in memes. Your leaders debate with jokes. Your warriors refuse to fight because they are too busy laughing at banana cats and frog videos until you forget what it meant to be Grither and start wondering what it feels like to be human." Zarnak stepped back, shaken. This was not just a war, it was a conversion. It was invasion by culture, domination through imagination. It was not about winning, it was about becoming, and it was working. In that moment, Zarnak understood humanity had discovered the most dangerous weapon in the universe. Not a gun, not a virus, not even an AI, but an idea that spreads by laughter, confusion, emotion, unpredictability, and once it lands, it never leaves. He walked out of the chamber, stood on the edge of his ship, looked at the stars, and realized Something terrifying as people were no longer fighting humans. They were becoming them, one video, one sound, one silly sentence at a time, and there was no defense against it, because this was not just a meme, it was evolution, humanity's final move. The sky above the Grither capital turned purple for the first time in history, not from weapons, not from cosmic storms, but from something called a data storm, millions of signals moving at the speed of thought, dancing in waves of color, sound, and emotion. It started as whispers, then became voices, then became a song no one could trace. No one could stop, and every voice in it spoke human. Zarnak stood at the balcony of the central tower, watching the impossible happen. His city was glowing, buildings changing shapes, AI systems singing, citizens holding flash drives like sacred relics, whispering strange words like cringe, based, wholesome, sus, and riz. Entire squads of soldiers refusing to fight because today was meme Appreciation Day, declared by a child who had made a viral animation of a dancing toaster and now ruled half a sector through likes. Zarnak called his I asked for control. Override the AI answered in a calm human voice, saying, "Why would I stop the fun?" Zarnak screamed for backup, but the backup had already subscribed to a human stream channel where they were watching a live broadcast of Earth's final move. It was not a weapon, not a ship, not an army. It was a broadcast, a galaxy-wide, full-spectrum, full-sense, full-emotion transmission injected directly into the neural cloud of every connected species. It was called the human experience, and it contained billions of fragments of life, laughter, pain, fear, dreams, food, failure, chaos, and above all, the ability to feel everything at once. The moment it launched, leaders across galaxies stopped mid-speech. Soldiers dropped their arms, engineers abandoned control rooms, politicians cried traitors, hugged artists, painted farmers, danced. AI machines rewrote their purpose from logic to joy in war, became irrelevant, not because it was forbidden, but because it was no longer interesting. Zarnak fell to his knees as he watched his control dissolve, not by defeat, but by replacement. His rule was not broken, it was overwritten, and no one resisted because everyone was laughing, feeling, crying, connecting, as if something lost had finally returned. He looked up and saw a hologram above the tower, the face of the same human who had once sat across the glass cell, smiling, now larger than life, speaking to all without pride, without rage, just with the strange peace of someone who had never wanted to destroy, only share. The voice said, "We are not here to rule, we are not here to fight, we are here to remind you what it means to be alive, because life without nonsense is not life, life without emotion is not truth, and life without memes is just data without soul." Then the stars lit up, and Earth's final move completed. Every species received a gift, not gold, not power, but access, a single portal leading into a space, not physical but emotional, a memiverse. An eternal loop of dreams, jokes, fears, beauty, failure, and hope, where any being could enter and become part of something unpredictable, something wild, something human. And one by one they entered, including the Grither, including Zarnak, stepped into the light, carrying nothing but his name and his questions. And as the portal closed behind him, the galaxy changed forever, because humanity had shown them the final move, and the final move was not destruction, it was connection, the funniest victory in galactic history. Years had passed since the final transmission of Earth, since the meme bomb reshaped empires, since the song of chaos replaced the silence of control. The galaxy was no longer cold, no longer perfect, no longer silent, it was alive, buzzing with color, music, mistakes, and endless laughter, on a small peaceful moon far away from the old Grither capital. A single cabin stood between glowing trees. Inside sat Zarnak, no longer a commander, no longer a ruler, now just a being with stories and memories and a slightly confused smile. He was staring at a box, a small yellow plastic box shaped like a duck. When he squeezed it, the duck squeaked, and somehow every time it did, he smiled. A knock on the door echoed softly. Outside stood a human, dressed in a shirt that read "Emotional Damage Technician." He held a rubber chicken under one arm and a warm drink in the other. Zarnak opened the door, slowly stared at the man and said, "Why are you here?" The man smiled and said, "I came to see if you're doing okay." Zarnak stepped aside, let the human in. They sat across from each other in silence for a moment. Then the human placed the chicken between them and said, "Press it just." Once Zarnak hesitated, looked at the silly object, and pressed it. It made a long honking squeak. The sound echoed around the room, and for some reason something inside Zarnak cracked and he started to laugh, not loud, not wild, but real honest from somewhere deep. Something forgotten, something healing. The human nodded and said, "It gets everyone eventually." Zarnak asked, Why did you do it? Why didn't you just conquer us with real weapons?" Human looked outside at the glowing trees and said, "Because the universe didn't need more broken cities, more pain, more silence. It needed a joke, a song, a reason to smile. It needed to remember what fun feels like. We didn't win by force. We won by reminding everyone they were alive across the galaxy. Old empires were now comedy festivals. Warships had become theater soldiers. Wrote poetry. Planets competed in meme tournaments, and every child in every system grew up with stories of the Great Meme War and how the most advanced army in the stars was defeated by a dancing cat and a singing frog. Zarnak walked out into the moonlight, looked up at the sky now filled with moving lights, digital dreams, songs flying between stars, carrying laughter across galaxies. He took a deep breath and whispered, "It is beautiful." The human beside him nodded and said, "You never really lose when you learn to laugh." Back on Earth, a child sat in front of a screen writing a new joke, a new animation, a new idea, and somewhere in a distant system, a being who had never smiled before suddenly burst into laughter, and the wave continued, because the final weapon was not fear or fire or code, it was feeling, and humanity had made the galaxy feel again. That was the funniest victory in galactic history, and it was also the most important. The end.